Hello, and so today I'm going to run through a CHAID analysis. If you're not familiar with CHAID, CHAID is a type of decision tree analysis that's used for prediction, classification, or looking at interactions between variables. The CHAID uses variables that are qualitative, or it uses interval variables, continuous variables that can be factored into logical groups. It's a non-parametric test, and so you do not look at normality of distributions. It works well with large data sets and lots of variables. The first step that you need to do is to install the CHAID package. I've actually already done this, so I don't need to do it again. But what this function does is in order to install a package, you type in install.packages, the name of the package in the beginning of parentheses, in quotations, comma, and then it comes from the repository, and this is the name of the repository right here. So I've actually already done this, so I'm not going to do it again. The next step is to load the CHAID package that I just installed, as well as these following packages. In order to do that, I use the library function. These makes these active, and I use the name of the package in parentheses. So I'm just going to highlight all of these and run them. And here you see that they are now loaded. The next step that I need to do is I need to import my data. There's a number of ways to do it, but for this process, I'm going to go to import data set in my environment. Mine is an Excel document. I'll go and browse for it. I know that my data set, I know where it lives, so I'm going to go and it's this data set. I will open it, and it gives me a preview here. And then I have to make sure that this first row's names box is checked, because it is. Do you see here? It actually writes this code for me, and now I'm going to import it. So here in the environment, it's showing me that the data set now is in the environment. It has 251 observations and 6 variables. It gives me a preview in this quadrant right here of my data, and I'm not going to run through this yet, but I will next. My next step is to attach the data that I just imported into the search path so that R knows I'm using this data for this analysis, that it has to do with this code. So I'm going to use the attach function, open parentheses, the name of my data set, which is CHAID data 2, and close that parentheses, and I'm going to run this. This is giving me, saying that these are masked from CHAID data. I'm not sure why. We're going to see if this runs. It may or may not. Now my next step is, since my data is loaded, we're going to see if this works. This is a new message. My next step is to factor my variables. So this tells CHAID what the factors are. It has the variables. So I'm going to review my data really fast. I have RT, which is a retirement plan, and it has enrolled or not enrolled. Gender has male and female. Married is married or not married. Pet is have a pet and no pet. CD is children, so we have no children, 1 to 2 children, or 3 or more children. And we have pay, which is salary or hourly. So I'm going to tell CHAID what my factors are, that these variables are factored. So I'm going to name my first factor plan. I'm going to use the factor function and use the variable name here in parentheses. And I do these for all of these. So I'm naming gender, and I just spell it out. I'm naming it. So I'm just going to highlight all of these. So I'm factoring all my variables and run it. And great. So here in the environment, it's telling me that child status is a factor with 3 levels, and it has the levels here. Gender is a factor with 2 levels. Married is a factor with 2 levels. pay status, a factor with 2 levels, pet status, a factor with 2 levels, and plan, a factor with 2 levels. So that's great. Now I'm just going to make sure that these are considered factors. So, and that R is recognizing them as such. I'm pretty confident that they are because they're here in my environment. But in order to do this, I'm going to use the is.factor function and follow that with the name of the factor, not this variable, but the name that I gave it in parentheses. And I do this for each one. So I'm going to highlight all of these and I'm going to run it. And here in my console, it's telling me that after each is factor, it is true. And that means that these are indeed factors. So that's excellent. That's exactly what we want to see. So it's important that these are changed into factors because the CHAID model does some splitting and merging of your factors. And so in order to do that, we need to move on to the next step, which is to define the parameters of the model. So the first step is to name the model, and here I'm naming it control, CTRL short, and I'm using the function CHAID control. And this in parentheses, I'm going to start with the parameters of the model. So min bucket is the minimum number of observations that can be in a terminal node. And here I'm putting this into, I did play around with these numbers because I've seen this done some different ways and use different values. So you can use different values here, but I'm going to use 2. And min split is also the minimum number of observations for a subgroup split. Here in alpha 2 and alpha 4, you set your significance level. I'm using 0.05. It's a pretty standard for what we use in psychology. And alpha 2 is for merging and alpha 4 is for splitting. And so these are the significance levels that I'm telling R to use in order to create merges and splits. Now, the next line, I'm actually going to name my model and run my model and set up my model. So I'm going to name my model CHAID RT for retirement because what I'm interested in finding out is if what the relationship is between these variables, and if you can predict or see the relationship as to whether or not an employee is enrolled in a retirement plan. So I have the name of my model. And then I'm using the CHAID function. The first variable, this right here, is my dependent variable, the plan. I want to know whether or not they are enrolled in a plan. Then next, I use this little squiggly thing. And then next, I'm going to add in all of my other variables. And these do not have to go in a specific order. They are separated by a plus sign. I am not specifying an order like you would in some other statistical analysis. So you can just put them all in there because the CHAID analysis is going to do the work. I end that with a comma. Next, I'm going to indicate what data to use. So I'm saying data with an equal sign, and that's the CHAID2 data that I imported earlier and indicated in my code into the search. And then last, the control I'm using is with the equal sign is the control model where I define the parameters here. This control is what I'm using, what I'm indicating for it to use. So it's going to use these parameters for this model. Before I run my model, I need to make sure that I run the parameters. So I set this up. there we go. And you see here on my console, it says it's there. So it says that it's run, no errors. Next, I'm going to run my model. And now it has run. So you see I got here in my environment, I also got the control models here in the Chade RT. So this changed a little bit. I don't know if you saw it flash. And then here, my next step is that I want to see what's going on with my model. So first I'm going to print it. I'm going to use the print function, and I'm printing the Chade model that I created up here. So I'm going to run that. And now it's given me this output, and it's giving me a lot of information here. It's telling me that I have a root, and I have this internal node and this internal node, and this gives me the number of cases that I have in each terminal node, as well as the arrow for each. And here at the bottom, it says I have how many internodes and terminal nodes I have. So I have 4 internodes and 5 terminal nodes. We can get a visual representation of this. So this is what we use decision trees for. So I'm going to go ahead and plot the same model, and I use the plot function with the name of my model, Chade RT, and I'm going to run this. Now here in my plot section, you see that I now have a visual representation of this Chade model. It starts with pet status as my root, and then it splits off to say have pet and no pet. Under the have pet node, we have pay status, and pay status splits off to hourly and salary. Under the no pet model, under the no pet branch, it goes to the first internal node, which is gender, and splits off from male and female. And then it's splits off one more time to pay status and to hourly and salary. Now my this terminal node is only a factor of 2, so it doesn't do it. It gives you this output, and it looks like it's saying that it's predicting who is not enrolled. So I originally had thought about who would be enrolled, and I guess this is the same way to look at it. It's pretty much showing me that it's not enrolled. I still think that this could be kind of confusing. There is one more step that we can do to make this a little more friendly to look at, and I can pick a different type of Chade plot. So I'm going to use my plot function again, and once again I'm going to use the name of my model, but I'm going to end that with a comma and tell R to run the type of model as simple. Simple needs to be in quotation marks, and then close that parenthesis. I'm going to run this, and here it shows a simplified model, and it does give the number of people in each terminal node with the error, but it's definitely saying that these are not enrolled. But look here, in this terminal node, number 9, is showing enrolled. So and it says 17, this ends in 17, are enrolled. So pet status, male, salary, 17 people, 17 men that are salary that do not have pets are enrolled in the retirement plan. So thank you for going through this with me. I appreciate time. This was a Chade plot. Thank you.